There's no shame in the real you.
No, not at all. The real me is pretty amazing.
Welcome to the Thoughts on Digital podcast. Ideas and insight about the ever-changing world of digital marketing. How's it going, everyone? My name's Adam Levine, and today I'm sitting down with Rob Spierenburg, CEO and co-founder of All Things Media. Today we're going to be talking about virtual reality and the automotive industry. How's it going, Rob?
No complaints. No complaints. Feeling good. Yeah. Feeling good about VR. Feeling good about the automotive industry.
Okay, well, that's good.
Excited to talk about it.
Those are the things we're talking about today.
Yeah.
So, here at ATM, we do a lot of automotive, right? And over the years, we've built a portfolio of things like that, for various clients. And VR, while it's not brand new to us, it's pretty new to the world at large, right? Yeah. And there's a pretty big impact that we're starting to see now, starting to happen. And why don't we talk a little bit about where you think, things are, and then we'll talk about where things are maybe headed.
Sure. Well, VR in general is still in its infancy. And a lot of people think that, it kind of peaked, last year or the year before when there was all this buzz about it, and then it just kind of fell away. When the truth is that was really the first foray into consumer-ready VR devices and VR experiences. Here, we've been dabbling with VR for a while, but it didn't really hit me as the next big coming thing until I tried on the HTC Vive. Because before that, all VR was just looking around in 360, but you couldn't move around, put your face up to things, really experience them the way that you do in the real world. And the first time I engaged with the HTC Vive, I realized, this is going to be big.
Oh, it was huge.
When it's going to be big, when it's going to go mainstream really depends. But you look at just, the VR devices that have come out in the past, 2 to 3 years, it's crazy. I think the Vive is only maybe like 2.5, 3 years old.
Yeah, something like that.
And so, you have these big bulky headsets, like the Vive, but with, these full-featured bulky headsets. And then you've got the other end of the spectrum, which is like the Samsung Gear or Google Cardboard thing.
Right. Sort of the easier entry point into VR.
Yeah, but I feel like now the hardware manufacturers are moving to kind of fill that gap, right? You had like devices that were dependent on the phone, devices that were dependent on the PC, but now we're seeing a lot more devices come out that have the computer built into them, right? Like the Oculus Go is a great example. Now that's something relatively low price point, sub $200 or between $2 and $3 depending. Right. Has a controller, has a good 360, a nice field of view. Doesn't have room scale or the ability to kind of walk around, but it has the computer built into the device. So it's way simpler and easier to use. And I realized the value of that thing when I got stuck in an airport with one, on a layover, not even on a layover. My flight was like delayed, like 6 hours. Right. And I spent like 4 hours inside of there, and I didn't even notice the time pass. Wow. Because it was like I wasn't in an airport. I was wherever
Was that like games or was that a movie?
Oddly enough, a little of both. But the thing that I found really strange is I watched a fair amount of Netflix.
Sure.
And Netflix has this thing where you turn it on, and in the VR device, you're sitting in this virtual living room, which I thought was kind of hokey and silly when I first saw it.
Right.
But then when I actually used it, it really has an effect on your viewing experience. You underestimate how much the environment that you're watching a movie in affects your appreciation of the movie.
It's almost like in a nice hotel.
It's like a little virtual couch in like this little like lodgy kind of Colorado ski lodge thing.
They really put like a They put a design in
the
there.
TV
They didn't keep it generic.
They really thought it out. And then you have the ability to turn that off. And I turned that off, and what I found was when I turned it off, I started getting maybe not sick, but a little bit more uncomfortable.
Well, when you turn it off, what was there? Was it just
gray space with a big screen?
Yeah. No, you're putting something in, you're going to immerse yourself.
But you imagine if you watch something on your phone, you're not concerned about the environment. You're just absorbed in your phone.
Right, but you have an environment.
Yeah.
Like, you don't just have grayness.
I was surprised at how disconcerting it was to watch, a Netflix video in the void, in the gray void.
In the void.
So, but the Logi thing was really cool. It makes you feel really comfortable, and after a while, you get used to it.
I'm sure they did so much like just testing to figure out what most people like and feel comfortable.
But
That's
I was
interesting,
surprised.
though.
But then if you look at other devices, so you've got the Oculus Go.
Yeah.
Now both Oculus And I believe Vive are coming out with all-in-one head units that will have the 360 view, but also a certain amount of room scale or the ability to move around and walk around the space. And, the price points keep coming down. The technology and the tracking keeps getting better, and you've got a lot of major players in the space. With Microsoft with their mixed reality headsets, you've got Vive, you've got Oculus, and Oculus is backed by Facebook, which is making a lot of inroads and are really big plans, it seems,
Sure.
for VR. So I don't imagine that it's going to go away by any means. And I think if anything, we saw this big spike where everybody got excited about the tech a little too early.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what we're going through now is kind of the quiet revolution that's going to happen over the next year or two. Where better content and better devices are developed until somebody comes out with a headset that becomes ubiquitous.
Right. Right.
And whether or not that's a straight VR headset or a VR augmented reality combination where you have a set of augmented reality glasses that can also serve a VR function. HoloLens actually has kind of a VR mode. It's Holo Tours is really more of a VR experience than an augmented reality experience, but it's quite compelling. The problem is HoloLens has a limited field of view.
Right.
So I feel like once somebody solves that field of view issue, which we're already seeing better fields of view coming out in the new versions,
right.
The hardware for augmented reality versus virtual reality becomes less of a distinction. AR is just, leaving enough of your vision open to see it mapped into the space,
Right.
whereas VR is completely blocking it out. But I think we'll see devices come out that do both and do both well.
So speaking about, that's really talks to the fact of, how the hurdle of getting it in someone's home is, but for those people that do wind up with it, whether it's a headset or Google Cardboard or just straight up holding your phone up and moving it around.
Which isn't really VR, but it's kind of like VR.
Right,
yeah.
right. But sort of that
magic window thing.
Exactly, that sort of experience. What do you think, are some of the benefits to the consumer at that point, to not, as far as the, maybe the showroom experience goes?
Obviously, we have a very specific take on this.
Right.
We created the Cadillac and Vr Experience that allows dealerships to have a VR headset there that will let the customers see every vehicle in the line, right? And do any customization to the vehicles that they want, jump into the back seats, look at the tire, look at the, the steering wheel really close up and get a good feel for the vehicle. And I think in the short term, what we did for Cadillac was really just a way of augmenting dealerships that didn't have a lot of space on the lots, allowing customers to see the full, vehicle line in a place where, it's impossible for a dealership to have 24,000 iterations of their vehicles. But with something like this, you can see an Escalade and get a feel for it, but maybe it's not the exact one you want. You can put on the headset and see every possible color. And even if they don't have an Escalade on the lot, you can see the Escalade, you can jump in the back seat, you can get a feel for it, which really I feel like is the last step that somebody needs before making a purchase of that size. Outside of driving it, which I think, a fair amount of people will need to drive it. There's a lot of people that don't, oddly enough.
Yeah, I'm not one of them, but
a lot of people don't have to drive the car. I mean, I personally insist on a test drive of every vehicle, but there's quite a few people out there that don't. As evidenced by the fact that online purchasing of automobiles is exponentially increasing over time. It's crazy, but there's people that are buying vehicles online, sight unseen.
Yeah.
So when you think about the growth of kind of high value sales and luxury sales online, and the fact that this is becoming a thing, you really need another more experiential way to engage with the product. If you're going to make that purchase, if the kind of person that is going to buy a car online,
right,
or is on the verge of buying a car online, it makes sense to have experiences like this to allow them to get as close as they can to kicking the tires.
Right. You need something to tip the scales, really, and to make
exactly. So that's the one side of it.
Yeah.
But so from a commercial standpoint or from an automotive manufacturer standpoint, the benefit is reduced cost of overhead in terms of not having to maintain these massive inventories if they don't need to, increased chance of a sale just by the customer actually being able to see what they want to buy, and potentially increased customer satisfaction, lessens the frustration of them not having the vehicle that they want for them to see there. And it also increases the chances that they'll be able to make sales online.
Right.
Where it really gets interesting, I think, though, is when it starts to come into the home. When people have these headsets at home, and they can engage in these kind of very, experiential, visceral VR applications. When they can engage with the vehicle in a very visceral and experiential way, they're going to get a much better sense for it. It's great for them. But what's really interesting to me is, up until now, people are already doing all their shopping online.
Yep.
Right. They're going online. They're researching the car. They're seeing what it looks like. They're figuring out the price. They're going to TrueCar or any one of a million other places to figure out their best price. And the only time that they actually engage with the dealership or talk to anybody that represents the brand is when they start negotiating price, which is the most contentious point in the relationship. Right. If you're gonna have a sale go, the worst part of it is when you get down to the nitty gritty and start debating price, and they push back on you and you push back on them and vice versa. The best part of the experience is actually when you're first looking at the vehicle, figuring out what color you want. That's the exciting part. Right. So for automotive manufacturers, the increase in online shopping, not even purchasing online, but just research online, has really lessened that kind of connection between the brand representative and the customer.
Right.
And so when you look at something like VR in the home, we've been working with multi-user VR, so that somebody who's looking at this in the home could, press a button or press a little call button, and a virtual dealer, a dealer in the dealership could put on a headset and appear in the space with them and walk them through, answer any questions that they have. And what's so great about that is now you've got the dealer, the brand representative there at the inception of the car buying experience, the most important and most exciting part. Yeah. So as we see, I think there's been an enormous shift in the automotive industry and in most luxury retail or high-end retail industries, where customers are increasingly pulling away from that personal relationship with the brand. And they're becoming far more distant because they have all of this research. It used to be they had to talk to somebody at the dealership to find out what they wanted to know.
Right. They can do this all on their own now.
Exactly. And the younger generations are.
Yeah.
And they're coming in well-informed, in many cases more informed than the person standing on the floor.
Yeah.
Because they know exactly what car they want, and they go in armed with all the knowledge about this one car and every price and every spec. And, they're talking to somebody that's trying to sell 24 different vehicle models and asking them very pointed and specific questions. And I think that getting back to that genesis or that early point in the buying experience is something that's crucial. It's crucial as brands try to reconnect and establish relationships with the younger generation. And it's crucial in terms of kind of getting ready for, the increasing exodus to online retail.
Yeah, I think just to speak to the idea of getting ready, not just being ready for the onslaught of everyone moving online, but to give your dealers a training tool for the brand, right?
Yeah.
So, speaking about, not knowing all the things, but these people know everything coming in, you could have a leg up or be at least on the same playing field as your consumer if you give your employees the training by putting them in the same experience and having them go through it.
And that's another big part of what we've done. There's a lot of training aspects to just the VR tool. And when you talk about multi-user VR from a training perspective, think about when they release a new engine that's never been, released in a market before. They've got the engineer that built it or a bunch of engineers that really know it, and they have to train all of the engineers here.
Right.
And teach them about it and make sure that they know how to service it so that they can train all of the local engineers. That is an enormously time exhaustive and expensive process, right? Because that engineer, let's say he's in Germany or in some other country, maybe he's even in here, maybe he's in Detroit.
Sure.
Has to take 2 weeks out of his work schedule.
Right.
Catch a flight, check into a hotel, at a conference center. They have to take the same amount of time or however much time out of the lives of 30 other individuals, fly them down to that location, check them into a hotel. Then once they're done paying for flights and time and the conference space, then they have to pay for an engine, right? So that they can put it there and rip it apart. Exactly. And even when they rip the engine apart, they're only looking at the pieces. And maybe they have a fully assembled engine and they can look at it that way. But they're not really able to see much of what's going on inside from an engineering perspective or to truly understand it on kind of a more, a more deep level. But with something like VR, and we've created demos of this, You could have all 30 of those people put on a headset, take an hour out of their day, throw on a headset from wherever they are, appear in a space with the engine in a virtual space, and be able to engage with it in a way that you could never engage with the engine in the real world. You know, be able to ghost out the exterior, see how the interior components are running while the engine's revving, create faults in the engine, and then have the attendees try and diagnose it. There's a million different training methodologies or ways of handling this. There's a million different ways to train with this that are just not available today. Take away the fact that it's going to save an enormous amount of money in terms of flying all these people down in hotels and flights and time.
Sure.
And tearing apart engines and all that stuff.
Right.
Take all of that away. When it comes to modern e-learning pedagogy or the methodologies that have become really mainstream, it's generally understood that sitting somebody down for more than an hour block of instruction is never a good idea, right? Because after hour 1, hour 2, hour 3, people start to tune out, right? They get tired, they get worn out. Well, it kind of goes in the face of the way they're training now, because the way that they're training now is they're flying somebody there, and because they're paying for all of this stuff, and because of all of that stress and time, they're locking them into 8-hour, 9-hour days of constant training because they want them to just take it all in. But what educators have been increasingly saying is that, we can absorb a lot, but if you're trying to get somebody to understand something, if you want, let's say the brain is a cup, don't pour a swimming pool on it, right? Because you're only going to get some of the pool.
Sure.
What you want is to break it up into little sessions so that people can take in the information and retain it.
Makes sense,
a VR system like this, take an hour out of your day, you can break that 8-hour training session across a week, across a couple of weeks, and it's only taking an hour out of their day each time.
Yeah.
So it seems like a logical jump for training, not only in automotive, but in a wide range of industries. And I think you're going to see a lot more of that cropping up soon. Obviously, we've created some tools that do this, and some of the big players in the space are also experimenting with it as well. I mean, things like Holodeck for NVIDIA. They have a platform that does something very similar.
Yeah.
But there's always going to be a need for those experiences to not just be looking at a model, but engaging with it in some way.
Right.
Seeing animations or the ability to kind of create little interactive tests where a group can kind of engage in it together. And those are the types of things that we're pushing on and that we're working on really hard. And those are the things that got us into NRF.
Sure.
This year as one of the most innovative companies in NRF. And those are the types of things that are going to continue to move the needle in the years to come.
What do you think about, speaking of the future, what do you think is sort of on the horizon there? So multi-user VR, I think, is that next step, next iteration in VR. But I wonder if there's any, predictions that might come from that.
Well, I mean, might come from multi-user,
or just this sort of shared experience that someone could have.
Well, yeah, I mean that's the thing. Never before in our lives, or at least in my life, has there been a software or technology that has the potential to affect so many industries and so many ways that we do things. I think multi-user is a step, right? I think you're going to see artificial intelligence being integrated into VR so that the other person in that space doesn't necessarily have to be a person.
Yeah.
But it can be an artificial intelligence, and this is scary ground because it does fly in the face of a lot of jobs out there. But, in reality, down the road, that virtual dealer that you call when you're shopping for a vehicle inside the VR space could be an artificial intelligence that has access, like I was saying, you go and you ask about the specific car and they don't know because they've got 24 models or 60 models that they need to know.
Yeah, well, the AI.
With AI, it'll have instant access to every fact, everything on record about the vehicle. What's more, it'll also potentially have access to every time somebody's asked that question in the past. Right?
Yeah, that's
and
crazy.
And so from that, they could infer, think about the way a Pandora playlist works, right? You play this song, and then you like it, and then, it gives you another song, you don't like it, you like it. And then over the time, machine learning, it figures out, okay, people that like this song probably are going to like this song, and this song. The same could apply to a sales process, right? Like somebody that asks this question that's interested in this is probably going to be interested in this, this, and this. And how many times when somebody has asked this question has it led to a sale? And what's the pathway that led to that sale. And so every question that you ask in artificial intelligence gives it a pathway. It can figure out the best thing to where to go next
Right.
to drive you further on to that sale, or in a less malicious or malevolent way, or to give you the information that you need.
Right. No.
So it's very interesting. I think here we're looking at the artificial intelligence side of things. We're working with AI, but we're not looking to replace anybody. What we are looking to do, though, is create a way for AI to be visualized within a VR space, because a lot of people are focusing on what it's going to say and how it's going to think and what it's going to do. But equally important as we move into like a virtual reality and augmented reality world is how is it going to move? How is it going to look? How is it going to behave? Because the way that I talk to you, if I was just talking like this the whole time, no arms and just very still like this,
exactly.
it's terrifying and it doesn't feel natural.
Right.
And AI is going to be all about making it feel natural, right? And so the movements are things that we can already start to capture with real person engagements in a multi-user VR space. We can say, okay, when this guy's talking, where did he move his hands when he was saying this? What was he saying? What was his intent? What was his mood? How do the hands move? How does the head move?
Wow.
And start using that to inform kind of movement models that will ultimately be mapped onto AI. So it's all going to tie together at some point. And I think if we've seen any kind of consistency or any kind of trend in the industry that we're in over the past 20 years, it's the trend of convergence. Things that are separate, innovations that happen separately, ultimately combine. Yeah. You talk about the cell phone and the computer and the audio player and all of these different devices that used to be 5 different devices or 3 or 4 different devices you'd carry around, CD player, all that stuff. They're all now combined into one device, right? And now that device also includes augmented reality and the ability to do virtual reality. And I think if you look at it from a technology standpoint, artificial intelligence, augmented reality, virtual reality, wearables, all of these things are also going to converge and become one thing that everybody engages with and that adapts to whatever the existing need is.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah, I mean, I really that's a lot to soak in.
It's
right
a cool
there,
and it's an amazing and terrifying future we face.
Yes,
in many ways
that we're building for ourselves.
But it's exciting to be part of it.
Yeah,
and I think as a company, our focus is making sure that in all of this cool technology and in all of these amazing advances we're going to make, in the future, that the human element of that doesn't get lost.
Absolutely.
Because like it or not, online sales, all the stuff that's going on in the industry, at the end of the day, that personal human connection is more valuable than all of the tech that we've brought out, right? Trust and the ability to talk to a person or to connect with other people is always going to be an important thing. And I sound like I'm marketing a social network, but there's going to be a social aspect to every new technology that comes out ultimately.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for mildly concerning me, but also enlightening me on the topic.
My pleasure. Next time you want to be frightened.
Yeah. I'll just give you a ring.
Just come by. You want some nightmares? I got you covered.
Thanks so much.
It was a pleasure.
Awesome. Ideas always go further when they're shared. If you enjoyed the show, leave us a review on iTunes or drop us a comment on YouTube. Let us know what you think about today's topic. We'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next week.